So you guys about ready for a ride along on building a big old dragon? Well then let's get started. So what I've done is I've taken this trampoline pole that looks exactly like this trampoline pole when it's not been bent, and I bent it into much more of a circular shape by using this truck that I have in the shop right now and putting this down in here, and then putting a big cheater bar on this end, this cheater right here on this end, and move it and then move it and then move it and then move it and then move it, bending it all the way, you know, about every ½ inch or an inch, so we get a nice even bend out of it. Even enough. This isn't a perfectly even bend because that's not what I'm going for, and you'll see that as time goes on. This is exactly the bend I wanted. It took a little bit to get there, and I opened up this bend, the sharp bend, up a little bit, and then increased this one a little bit. So this isn't even at all the same shape as where it started out. You can see, and that's going to be the main brace that holds the entire dragon to its base, is that one pole. Well, let's weld her up. Now that this main brace is welded in place, I'm going to go ahead and get some extra braces for where it's welded to the wheels. It can't just be welded in those two little spots. There's gonna be a lot of weight up there. So it needs to be really braced down there, really attached. So that's what I'm gonna work on next. So I've gathered all these trampoline poles. And the reason I've gathered this particular style, 6 of them, is because I want to cut this piece right here off of every one of them. So I'm going to take a die grinder and I'm going to cut that off, that weld on both sides, so I preserve the entire piece and this curvature right here. That's what's important. I mean, I could do it, but it's already done. So I'm going to, and plus what's really nice is these slip over most of the other sizes. So I'm going to cut all 6 of these off and weld them up like they are to this, but instead I'm going to weld them up to my main trunk, and they will support 2 of them for the wings, 2 of them for the front arms, or the arms, and 2 of them for the legs. And that's where we'll start, but I'm going to get those cut off now. So now we've got all 6 of these cut off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 for the legs, put them on here, 2 for the arms, put them on here, and 2 for the wings, and put them on here. And that should secure everything pretty darn well. Between that and the 1/4 inch thick full exoskeleton, you should be able to throw this thing out of an airplane and have it hold up pretty darn well when it hits. Arm, arm, wing, wing, leg, leg. And then I cut out and welded that brace on, because that point right there is going to have all the tension on it from this whole thing. So now we're ready to build an exoskeleton. You don't want to be in on that, do you? All right, let's do it. So I'm going to begin with the body. We're making the body of the dragon with what I've got here is chicken wire. But before I put that on, I cut down a bunch of cattle panels to serve as smaller trellises, because I got them 4x16 or 4x12, whatever they were, and I cut them down to 4x4 so we could use them as trellises in the garden beds for certain plants in certain areas. When I did that, I ended up with, I don't know, looks like about 30 of these, a bunch of them, bunches of them. And I'm going to take those and weld them in strategic spots poking off of this like a porcupine, so it makes it easier for it to hold the chicken wire in the spots. And then once I get the chicken wire cinched up enough to where I want it, and it's the thickness that I want, the diameter that I want, then I can just go through and tie it off to those and then cut those off right there at the level where they meet the chicken wire. And so that's what I'm gonna do first. I'm gonna weld a bunch of those on and then we'll go from there. Now we've got all these welded on here now, and there's a bunch of them. It's got it kind of looking like a porcupine. Now I'm going to start forming my chicken wire trunk around those and tying it all together. And what I've done here is I've wrapped that chicken wire around this, and then I've zip tied it to these pegs at the points where I need the thickness to be, where I need the dimensions to be. Now I'll go through and I'll just cut these off right on the outsides of the zip ties. So this is all enclosed, so I can just encapsulate it in a fiberglass shell. And then the next thing I'm going to do is the same thing down here. I'm going to weld a few more pegs down in here and do the same thing down in here and have it gradually get smaller and smaller and take the shape that it needs. Force it into shape so I can make a fiberglass shell on it after that. And what I'm doing here is I've wrapped this fiberglass around that armature and added a couple inches to it and cut it. And I'm gonna make 2 of these. And then I'm gonna wrap one around there and fasten it somehow, fiberglass it, and then immediately wrap the second one around it. And then I'm going to work my way down from that. Or I may even start at the bottom. I haven't fully decided, but for now, I'm cutting out all of the fiberglass I'm gonna need for this job. Now I've installed the first layer, and it's 2 layers thick, which is probably going to be enough for this project. And the reason I've started down here instead of at one end or the other is because of this structure. This is just like a big old wet blanket, and it doesn't just stick to anything. And I did it in one piece, but the piece had multiple cuts this way so they could overlap each other in here. But they don't meet under here. They don't wrap all the way around. That makes it tough. So this particular one, I started down here just so I could run one big piece of tape underneath it and stick it clear up here and clear up here. And you have to have something to stick it to. You know, so if there was slimy, wet stuff here, or worse yet, both, but one's bad enough, one would do the trick, where I couldn't stick my tape on both sides and it would not hold all this up under here. This would just droop down. You'd never get it to stick. So that's why I started here. So I had a good dry surface to stick my tape to here and here, and I have to just sculpt this. I have to just pin it in place. And now it's dry and I'm ready to unmask it.